Now, I must admit, in a 3-month stretch that's full of expansive titles like Horizon Zero Dawn and Mass Effect Andromeda and Nier Automata and Persona 5 and Zelda and more, Ghost Recon Wildlands ranked pretty low on my priority list. I'm also going to admit to being a little bit jaded by the Ubisoft game template and an approach to development that seems a lot more about size than it does about substance. And unfortunately, whilst proving to be a beautiful affair, Ghost Recon Wildlands pretty much lived up to my expectations and fears as a single-player venture before papering over the cracks as something of a co-op mixed bag. Now, I tell you all this just so you know where things stand before we dive in fully. Most of the games I've mentioned are predominantly single-player titles, designed to be played as exploratory adventures full of rich, detailed characterization and lore, and Wildlands is just none of those things, and we'll go into why a little bit further in. After creating your Ghost Operative from a dizzying array of customization options, you're sent into Bolivia with 3 chums to destabilize the nation and liberate it from a massive cartel headed up by a tattooed nutjob. Now, Wildlands takes a really cartoon approach to its enemies, and it's kind of a thing I wish it had embraced a little more into kind of the various facets of its game design and world building, because holy cow, that would have been a lot more fun than what we have here. See, everything's a little bit too serious, a little bit too po-faced, and despite the occasionally deft writing of Tom Clancy himself and the way he often acknowledged the ethical murkiness of his plot lines, you'd be a fool to go into this game expecting anything other than rampant interventionist jingoism. Wildlands might bear the Clancy name, but its plot is a headache-inducing return to the most idiotic Bushisms of 2003. But Wildlands is all about making Bolivia great again. The Santa Blanca cartel has taken control of the country and bombed an embassy. Enter 4 US specialists with a very clear mission: take down the cartel and assassinate its kingpin, El Sueno. In order to do that, however, you've got to engage in a little pyramid killing first. Underneath El Sueno are 4 major operational parts of the cartel: influence, production, security, smuggling. And these operations are run by heads and underbosses, each with up to 5 bucons in each region who control little portions of the map. Basically, you have to go into each area, undertake a handful of, pretty identical missions that generally end with you killing or capturing the bucons, or maybe stealing a vehicle or some intel or something like that, cause enough havoc, and eventually missions will open up for you to do the same to the underbosses and then eventually the operational heads themselves. Now, these missions play out much like the third-person versions of the outposts in Far Cry 4. You go into a village or base and either kill everyone, retrieve an item, or capture a person of interest. There aren't a huge array of tools at your disposal, so if you're playing this by yourself, things get pretty dull pretty quickly. The bases and the outposts do change things up in terms of structure. What you're actually doing rarely alters, and in Far Cry 4 these outposts were kind of pleasant distractions and interesting extras. In Wildlands, they're basically the whole game. Thing is, as a dedicated co-op experience, that's actually kind of great, right? No lengthy cutscenes, no filler, just you and some mates, a basic objective, and a whole bunch of freedom. And when playing with friends, there are some moments when the game clicks into place and realises its potential, if only for a few brief moments. Infiltrating an enemy base with a friend or two, as another gives like sniper support from a nearby mountain, can be great fun. Parachuting into a camp at the dead of night as a fearsome foursome and dispatching enemy soldiers with like ruthless efficiency can be deeply, deeply rewarding. Necessity plays a part too. I mean, the AI is really quite bad, and having friends on hand to revive you swiftly is so much better than waiting for a computer control assistant to take a minute to do the same thing. In fact, most of the time you'll actually just bleed out and die and respawn halfway across the map, which is not great. It all handles well enough, of course. The gameplay is smooth, the weapons satisfying, each kill feels like an accomplishment, and at its best, Wildlands presents a series of tactical puzzles to be solved with machine guns and mayhem. Truthfully, although this is a game where a lot of your squad mates will shout, "Check your targets, people," many of the best laid strategic plans will almost inevitably fall apart and descend into awesome moments of explosive bullet-ridden craziness, and that's kind of where everything clicks. You've just got to have a few friends on hand to prolong the ballistic improvisation for as long as possible. But that really is the sticking point. Wildlands should be considered a co-op game that just so happens to let you play it alone if you really want. I mean, as with the mission structure, the things that make for a decent blank canvas for emergent co-op hilarity are the same things that make for a terribly boring single-player experience. I mean, at least you can sync up headshots with your AI companions, which is really cool and fundamental to your survival, but even that's kind of better in multiplayer, with various little visual indicators telling you when everyone in your party's got their respective targets in their sights, and nailing that together is really, really awesome, actually. The trouble is that better with friends is not exactly a ringing endorsement. Wildlands is fun enough in co-op, but the same can be said of a whole bunch of other better games. Why would you play this when you could be playing Far Cry 4 itself, or Gears 4, or GTA 5, or Metal Gear Solid? Hell, if I'm being totally honest, I actually had more fun playing Army of Two, yes, even the terrible third game, than this. And part of that is that those games they just knew how boneheaded they were, and they embraced that, right? They also knew to stay away from insta-fail stealth. Wildlands can be a blast with friends, and even with strangers, right up until you get to an utterly pointless insta-fail stealth section. Nothing in the past 12 months has made me want to devour my controller or hurl it against the wall as much as this. Truthfully, part of me wonders, what could have been of Wildlands if it had been shaped under a different brand. Though fun in part, I never found myself cackling with explosive glee in the same way that I have in Just Cause or Mercenaries, and those games just never took themselves particularly seriously. But Wildlands, with its risible bugs and limited cookie-cutter gameplay and po-faced grimness on top of scripts stolen from the office bin of a Narcos knockoff, it's a mess. It's a massive mess. It is a pretty mess though. As with all Ubisoft open world grind 'em ups, Wildlands is beautiful. Here is a game as pretty as it is tone deaf, although its optimization on PC sometimes leaves a lot to be desired, and there's sometimes a little bit of slowdown and pop-in. That being said, having just started playing Mass Effect Andromeda, I now have a new benchmark for awful AAA pop-in that really should be done better. So well done, Wildlands. You're off the hook for this one. Credit where credit is due though. The physical, geographical world building is nicely done. The developers have done a really good job of creating a visual representation of Bolivia with varied terrain and creating, widespread opportunities for clandestine slaughter. It's just a shame that the game doesn't really engage with the region very much on a cultural level. The Bolivia of Wildlands is really just nicely rendered terrain, rather than feeling like an actual kind of lived-in place with a bit of humanity. And yeah, humanity. That would have been something that gave Wildlands a bit of flavour. That would have been good. Shame. The truth is that even as a multiplayer experience, this seems solid but unspectacular. There are better multiplayer sandboxes out there, and in all honesty, this just kind of made me want to fire up some Just Cause 3 or GTA 5 or Metal Gear Solid 5 or hell, even some Saints Row, to be honest. If you really want an expansive third-person shooter to play with some friends, you're probably better off with The Division. It's a different sort of game in a number of ways, but the gunplay is tight, the gameplay loop is actually more addictive than this, and somehow the world's actually kind of more interesting. And although I've been playing expansive games since the start of the year, sorry indie games, I will get around to playing some of you soon, I can't even blame my antipathy towards Wildlands on open world fatigue. I've loved each and every one of the games I've played this year in some fashion. There's just nothing to hold on to here. There's nothing remarkable or outstanding. I mean, this really is open world shooter the game. It's almost like Ubisoft are parodying themselves. It might even be funny, or would be if the game showed even the slightest hint of self-awareness or levity. I'm probably ragging on Wildlands a little bit too much, to be honest. It's a case of disappointment and an opportunity squandered more than anything else. And indeed, if you're just looking for a sandbox filled with bases to take down with your mates, then this is exactly that. Don't get me wrong, if you want a pretty, and it is very, very, very pretty, military shooter to romp around in while talking about last night's footy or the latest episode of The Walking Dead or Black Flags or Iron Fist, this will do the job just fine. It's just fine just doesn't really cut it for me, to be honest. That's just me though. What about you folks? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What do you make of this game? And let me know what you think I should review next. There are a few videos up here linked to some other curiosities, so do check them out. Do hit subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, I'll catch you folks very soon. Stay awesome. Till then, cheers. Bye.